Okay, let's get going and start today's class. While I wait for some of you to fill in or keep thinking, let's go ahead and look at it. Today we are discussing competition and industry, and here are some questions that I thought I'll share it with you, and let's look at it. Doesn't matter if you have not yet uploaded. We'll go ahead and do it later. But in your opinion, let me pick up. Let's say Ashwin, BV. What do you think is happening to movie theaters, and which way do you think it will go?
Actually, now the trend is changing, sir. Especially due to pandemic. Since movie theaters were not in position to operate, OTT has come, online over-the-top platform. Also, nowadays there is a lot of cybercrime. Even if a movie is released in theater, within 1 or 2 days you can get it online in private websites.
So will you, Ashwin, invest in a movie theater?
That may not be so good idea.
Not a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Anybody else who wants to add to what Ashwin is saying?
So already, sir, we are seeing the disruption because of this pandemic and the government regulations, which are coming up. So what an alternate, actually, already a few have already started it. They have converted into convention centers or, marriage halls.
Mm-hmm.
And these alternate, already a few have already started looking into it that way.
So,
in fact,
Vishweshwar Rao, do you believe that even without the pandemic, do you think this is the way the movie would have gone?
No, a lot of changes has already happened with OTT platforms coming up.
Yeah. So one is, of course, the pandemic. Second is probably the OTT, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think booming of OTT platforms were because of the pandemic. I think during that time that got really rolled up to the higher level, and also that if you see that Reliance is planning for future movies to release at home itself rather going to the theaters. There is a plan to that as well.
Correct. And what about the second one, oil exporting companies? Before you get there, I want to share with you a quote which one of the Middle East kingdom kings said, is that my grandfather rode a camel, my father rode a Toyota, I drive a Land Cruiser, whichever is the higher class of car, but my son is likely to ride a camel. So that was the comment that this king made. So in your opinion, what do you think is going to be on the story of the oil exporting countries? Let me pick up somebody, and then of course we can open it up. Gagana, what do you think? If you are there, what is your opinion? Or Kiran?
No.
Yeah, go ahead. Anybody else is fine now.
Yeah, Professor Murugesh here.
Yeah.
The oil price booming, the reasons depends on the country. So if check in India, because of tax imposed heavy in state and central government. So that is the main reasons in booming in India, the oil price. So if you look into the futures, the more electric vehicles Tata and some other companies start producing, so that maybe help us to go for the future, one thing. And another one, most of them preferring nowadays for bicycles. So these are two things, maybe the futures.
Good. Yeah.
Sir, what
Can
I think is, they will still sustain in the market, provided that the value will go down, but due to the industrial requirements, they will still be there, but not for a longer time.
Okay. I
There will
think,
be a slow death.
right. Slow death. Okay. That's interesting. Then, so it's predictable death, right? You're saying predictable death. Okay. CB Thomas.
Yes, science almost they have already said it. So because of in the future, I guess it will definitely totally go down, as electric vehicles are already also into the markets, and it's very demandful actually in foreign countries. And so I would like, and as I said, in the Middle East, see like Dubai and all actually have now right now is investing more into tourism, because they came to know that petrol is not how long they cannot depend on it for a long.
Okay. Okay. Good. So now, why don't you give me your thoughts on the other one, on the Duo app?
Geo app, sir.
Yeah, the third one. The
So,
Google.
Sir Shankar here.
yeah.
Right.
So the Duo app compared to WhatsApp is the WhatsApp has a single frame where we can have a call, chat, and audio, video. It's made easy to adaptation point of view. Compared to Google Duo, we need to give in login. For audio, we have to come use one call. There is no GS.
Shankar, you are now you're giving a technical answer. I mean, somebody like Google, I mean, overnight he can do all of this, right? How long does it take for Google to add in these features? What do you think is the other feature? Yeah, that was
I felt according to me, I felt the WhatsApp in the beginning, the way they have entered the market. Hello, am I audible?
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So the way they have entered the market is like they created a reputation, and where everyone got used to it. Okay, and it was like it finally everyone is like we cannot live without WhatsApp. That kind of a stage.
Hang on.
And
You're almost correct. Think for a minute and give me, I mean, you are correct, of course, but try giving let's say, giving a managerial answer.
Duo,
I think WhatsApp.
Pawan here. I think Duo has done nothing special to prove better than WhatsApp. Well, WhatsApp came in 2009 and Duo came in 2016. That has
the user reach or the advertisement and the marketing was for the Duo was very limited.
Okay.
Sir, I felt that, WhatsApp had always been innovating new features to be always in the front line, which Duo probably did not do. They came in late, but they were very stagnant, both in respect to adding features, in a marketing concept. That's why they failed.
I'm still looking for an answer.
yes,
They gave
Sir,
it
can I try?
the lower cost,
Pawan here.
which is affordable even for a common man.
Yeah, what is that?
The lower cost, which the common man can also afford the facility. So now everyone has a good mobile phone using internet, just because Geo has a cheaper cost compared to other competitors.
Okay. It looks like one more.
Sir, yeah, I would like to add Pawan here. So apart from all the technicalities that the other guys said, I think it all depends on the number of users, right? If I'm using WhatsApp, the other person should have the WhatsApp application on his mobile. So in that way, the number of users of Duo application and Telegram are very less. So I think that is the.
I think you're quite close to what I'm trying to push you to think, is that all of us wanted to move to Telegram when there was some when there was that crisis that they are going to bring in security and things like that. How many of us were really successful in moving? Not very. Okay, good. Now, the unspoken lot will talk about the airline industry struggling. Who has not spoken so far? Who is there? You don't speak, I'll push you to speak. Guru?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What do you think is happening to the airline industry?
Yeah, airline industry, actually what I feel is the number of people who are flying is not reduced. It has actually increased, but the number of competition within the airline industry has increased, and then that is how people are using different methods or different modes, different companies to travel. Like initially it was like Air India or anything as such that they were preferring. But now they have a vast variety of competition or options that they have. So that is why the flyers are actually distributed, and then there is no reduction in the flyers, but it is just distributed.
Okay, good. Geetanjali,
So Jonathan here.
yeah, go ahead.
So the aviation industry, in fact, the last 2 months has drastically picked up their services, and many borders are being opened.
Jonathan, give a bigger picture. Like generally, even before pandemic, these guys were crying. Like
Yes.
yeah. So let's look at the bigger picture. But continue, Jonathan. I want you to speak. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So, I mean, there are many competitions and many, cheaper fares available, and they could upgrade it as well. So many services, different carriers, they offer different services, and, they try to get the customers in. Even during the pandemic, they had many type of, they provided the kits to.
Making money.
Yeah, they were trying to make the money. In fact, my friend, he just finished his pilot training in Australia. He's just waiting for the borders to open, to get his flying license completed. So everybody's ready to go. They're not stopped.
Okay, good. Dhanvarshini lifting her hand again. Go ahead, talk.
Yes, Professor. What I feel is, so there is like we divide people into sectors, like who would be using what facility for how much longer time. So people who use the other facilities, at least in India, is more like, people from rural places or other places, they use the facility of train and bus a lot because it's convenient for them. They don't have to travel a longer distance to take that service. So airport, it's usually situated at a very, distant places where people usually cannot travel, or it's time consuming. We can take Bangalore as example itself. Like if I have to travel from Bangalore, like airport to this my place where I'm residing right now, it takes 3 hours to travel from there. So it's very time consuming and it's not that comfortable. That's why people usually don't prefer. And the second component which also comes in this particular circumstances is also the price. So the price for the flights is a bit higher, and the prices for the other travel is actually lesser. So people usually prefer comfort and the price both together, and that's the reason even if there are travelers, people still prefer other transport modes.
Good. Now Sibi raised her hand. Sibi or uske baad? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir. So I'm not sure how if that industry is going down or what. But
okay, so now go ahead and give me the other answer.
So Sir Vimal here. Sir Vimal, I think.
Vimal, you talk about Microsoft.
Yeah, I just want to. I will go to Microsoft, sir. My take on the airlines. I think for me, they are suffering more because of the cost and the charge imbalance. I think what the cost is to run the organization or the airlines and what they are actually charging from the customer, that's the imbalance. What is hurting us is my take on this.
Okay, and on Microsoft?
So Microsoft, sir, I would only say that Microsoft for me has become a psychological thing for most of the people. They think that because it's a Microsoft, they can only do this thing. But it's more, nobody's challenging them, or the trust factor, probably what they have created is far larger for any user. It's like if you don't have Microsoft, whether the system will work or not is like grained into our minds now. So I think to have somebody get into this is, I think it's more from psychological point of view rather than technology point of view for me.
Yeah, okay. Jagdeep, and if you are there. Okay, and Jagdeep is busy, I guess. Who else wants to take a shot?
So this is Mahesh here.
Yeah, Mahesh.
Yeah, sir. So regarding Microsoft, it is having no much competition from other competitors like Google. Google tried the 365, but it's not flourishing that much because Microsoft has established itself in the market for a long time, and it's been in the market, so it is preferred to be used by customers.
Perfect.
So it's a team that is more of doing the business.
Perfect. Yeah, the last one, and then we move quickly. I think we're down to half an hour. Yeah. Who wants to take a shot at Geo? The last question.
easily affordable to everyone.
Okay, so what Geo did, it made affordability to everyone. What else?
Geo actually got into the larger market base, that is lower middle class and the poor, I mean, who can afford, and then they actually capitalize on that.
Okay, good. Okay, here is my challenge and your challenge. Okay, great job, guys. But yeah, but hang on, Kiran. Time out. Great job, guys. But I'm not impressed by your answers for the simple reason that you are not talking like MBA students. For a simple reason that you're not using an MBA language. So what I'm going to do to you is at the end of the class, at the end of this chapter, every one of you who's spoken, I want you to come back and speak to me in a language that is almost like a MBA student. Is that a fine challenge? Yes, no, okay?
Yes, Professor.
Yes, sir.
So there's some background noise. Let's try to get rid of it and let's start. So we are looking at a subject called competition and industry, right? It's all about competition. It's all about industry. Now, what is competition? And why do companies compete? Just quick 3 answers from each one of you and then we'll move. Why do companies compete? Why is there a competition in the very first place?
Sustaining market.
Okay, point number 1.
Become a market leader.
Capture
the market.
To build their brand.
Okay. And what else?
Profit.
Provide alternatives.
Hang on. Who said something else?
To make profit.
Who's saying that?
Sri Lakshmi.
Yeah, Sri Lakshmi. Okay, good. So we got 3 of them. But remember, is Apple interested in market share? Is Apple interested in, what was the other answer? Whatever is the answer. The only reason companies compete is for profitability. Remember one thing, it's all boils down to profitability. The singular reasons companies compete. They may kill each other, they may strangle each other for a primary reason that they want to earn profits. Profits may come with a market share, profits may come with something else, but the primary reason is competing for profits. So if that is correct, it's not about defeating, it's not about Airtel competing for, market share is there, don't get it wrong. Market share is there, but eventually what would I do with the market share if it doesn't mean more profit, right? What would I do with the market share where there's no profit? We also looked at the BCG matrix. What happens in a BCG matrix, like a dog kind of a situation or a cash cow like a situation? You might be a largest shareholder in the market, but the market itself is not giving you enough money. What's the big deal? You may not want to hang on to it for a long time, right? So similarly, the only reason people want to compete is to increase their profitability. Now, what are the parameters that could impact profit? What do you think are the 3 parameters that could impact profit? I'll tell you one, a competition reducing the price could impact my profit because I'll have to reduce it. What else?
Quality, sir.
Pardon?
Quality.
Quality, yeah, quality, go ahead. What else?
So uniqueness with the competitors and make a difference and target.
What could impact my profit?
Sales.
Modify your sentence a little more well, Naina.
Marketing.
With respect to achieve a profit, we have to do more sales. I mean, if we either sell a product or sales strategies.
Okay. Okay, that's good. What else?
Product
Market
pricing.
segmentation.
Huh?
Market segmentation.
Okay. Okay. Now, all of you reset. Okay. Now, what could impact profit is if the customer says, I'll not buy it at this cost. Correct? If my,
Pricing, sir.
yeah,
Pricing.
so my competition starts entering the market, I'll have to do something. If the customer says, sorry, I cannot buy this headset for $500, I don't think it's worrying. But if I have to sell, if I have to have some profit in my life, so I will sell it for 400, maybe I'll make 100 rupees profit. So customer will reduce my profit. Now tell me one more thing that could reduce my profit. The three principles of pricing are competition, customer, and pati, patni or wo. You guys were excited when I told you that.
Offers, sir.
Huh?
Offers and discounts.
Okay, but what is pati? What is the economics of a product? What could impact profit if the cost increases? Yes or no?
Margin.
Yeah, so if the cost of the raw material increases, it will impact my profit. Yes or no? Right? Are you guys in tune with me? So you got this correct, saying that we compete to get more money into the company. We only thing that we are interested as an organization, as a company, as an entity is to increase profitability. And profitability is a very complex thing. Profit can be, my profits can go down because somebody enters the market. My profits can go down because the customer refuses to buy it at my price. My profits can go down if my supplier says, I cannot sell you at this price. So three things that go wrong is when multiple players enter into the market, the customer wants more value. And so for you to create value, you will have to you have to spend some money on creating value, and that could impact your profitability. The second thing that could happen is that your suppliers all the time want to make more money. Just like how you want to make money, your suppliers will want to make money. So what could impact your profitability is that your suppliers are always trying to make more money, and then you are stuck in a situation as to how do I keep my profitability going because I have to have an increase in cost. The second is that there could be people who will come in with an alternate. The users of your product there could be somebody else walking in who can make this a competition. So the answer to that is there could be multiple players who will push you to create a value. Then, of course, then you have to compete for the fact that your suppliers will start asking you for a better price. And then there are existing players and there are new players entering into the market. With this thought, I want you to get to understand what is called the Porter's 5 forces. Porter's 5 forces said that in any industry, in any situation, there are something like 5 forces which are always acting on the market, which are always acting on the industry. And these 5 forces constantly impact your profitability. What are these 5 forces? These 5 forces are the bargaining power of the buyer. Can you mute yourself, one of you? Priyanka, I guess. Yeah. So the thing is that the bargaining power of the buyer says that I cannot buy at this price. And what will it result in? The bargaining power of the buyer is more. You will have an impact on your profitability. The threat of substitutes will say that, okay, why would I want to buy this? I'll buy something else. Why will I, if the price of tea has gone up, I'll have, if the price of coffee or gone up, it doesn't really matter. I will buy the other one. So there is threat of substitute. I don't want you, I'll take something else. Then, of course, is the bargaining power of the supplier. If the supplier says that, sir, I cannot supply you this spare part or this component, you know what is happening? What is happening to the, can you talk about one supplier who is actually impacting today's market that comes to your mind?
Transportation, because
no, this is really impacting all industries, especially the automotive industry. There's a shortage of petrol. There's a shortage of chips, right? Semiconductor chips.
Yeah.
Reason is because they're saying that we have, and if I was reading that report, the report said that because of the pandemic, there have been a greater focus on the semiconductor chips going towards the development of phones and laptops, because there was a greater demand for it. And so now the supplier is saying, I would rather supply to somebody who's willing to take it, and hence there's a problem with the supplier demanding something more. Then we have, I'm ignoring you for a moment, Murugesan, and then we have the threat of new entrants. Somebody walks in from nowhere and takes away the market. The threat of the new entrant was what was happening. What if you had the cleanest movie theater? What if your popcorn pricing was equal to the maximum selling price or whatever that is? Nobody's going to come in. Just like how Vigneshwar Rao said, or Vishweshwar Rao, right, said that now there's a new model, there's OTT coming up. So why would I go there? The threat of a new entrant. Then there is rivalry among competition. Between the competitors, there is a huge rivalry. We always see that happening in any industry, especially in the airline industry, in the telco industry. People are competing. I don't know, in the earlier times, if you went to a bus stand, and if you go from a city to a village, you reduce the bus guy, a private bus guy would reduce the price by 1 rupee or 2 rupees. Everybody will move in there. Killing. Why? There's nothing happening. There is no new entrant. There is nothing else. It's just rivalry among them. So today we're going to talk about Porter's 5 forces, how it impacts the industry, how does the industry notice it, and what should we as managers sitting here be worried about, and how do we tackle it? So going out here from, you look at the impact of this, you will appreciate it as we go to the next slide. The next slide here is that the Porter's 5 forces again talks about, it doesn't really matter what industry you come from. It gives you an overall framework or an overall bird's eye view of what is happening in that industry. It's a much more organized tool than the SWOT. The SWOT has been there for quite a while. While the SWOT also talks about strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat, it doesn't give it a more strategic viewpoint. And many a time, SWOT has now become a tool more to push your views, your agenda within the company, just to make sure that you are covering yourself to any issues that might happen. You say the weakness is the bad management. The threat is the labor force. These are the kind of personal agendas which companies have so far done. But the Porter's Five Forces looks at it a more elaborate, more systematic, and looks at it from a okay. Now mute yourself. If you look at all of them, what were the 5 points I said? The power of the buyer. We'll talk about the power of the buyer. The buyer always is pushing you to reduce the price. Obviously, right? Every time the buyer is always pushing you to reduce the price. If you cannot reduce the price, give me more value. We go shopping down to the market. We are always haggling for a better price. If they says 20 kilos of 20 rupees for a kilo of onion, we say make it 80. It's a thing. I mean, it looks like a B2C problem, but it's not a B2C problem. It's a universal problem. Okay, so if you cannot reduce the price, give me more value. Okay, maybe okay, let me take one more onion extra or whatever that is. So buyers are always pushing you to reduce the price, and that will have definitive impact on your profitability. And these buyers can be a big chunk. And if the buyers are potentially large, I can ignore the salesman in the market can ignore me and refuse to give me the onions at a 2 rupee discount. Why? Because I could be a small individual customer. But if the buyer is a potentially powerful customer, he can push you down to get more value for the product or the service that you are providing. There was a period of time when Amazon or Flipkart or anybody else would run behind you and say, sell your ware, sell your products in my portal. But now he becomes so powerful that the buyer, because to an extent, Amazon is the buyer for the products that you are selling as an individual or as a small scale industry. So he will push you down because he constitutes as a big voluminous check. One of the examples that come up here is that in the United States, the construction company is not as fragmented as in Mexico or as in India. The construction companies are largely big entities. And these big entities can dictate what if they refuse to buy from you, you could be just out. You could be just out. But the same doesn't happen in, let's say, India, is because there are lots of smaller players, there are a lot of playing entities, and hence the buyer does not have the clout to push the seller. So this is a situation. To give you an example that from an industry that I come from, the biggest players in the media business is Sony, Star, and the likes of them. So they are big and they are potentially strong. So they will dictate which way the pricing goes. So they will be able to push us out if we do not give them a price that will matter. So one of the things that a buyer does is buyer is always trying to push the pricing down or demand a more value for the product. The second thing that we have is suppliers. Suppliers will charge always a higher price, right? Because for the supplier himself is an entity. The supplier himself is an organization who is looking for profitability. What does profitability mean? What does competition mean? Eventually higher price. So suppliers are always insisting on a higher price. And powerful suppliers can negotiate. Obviously, right? If you're a powerful supplier, if you are the only supplier, if, for example, we need enriched uranium. Enriched uranium comes from Australia or from certain countries which are part of a US group. So they will say, I mean, they charge a higher price, which is beyond money. They will say you must sign a non-nuclear proliferation treaty or something like that, or you must give away some other controls. So powerful suppliers always have it. Now imagine that is the same thing that is happening in the computer industry. Both Microsoft, you are selling your laptop, you're selling your own computer or desktop, and then you put a sticker which says Intel inside. And who is Intel? Intel is a supplier. Now, if Intel will demand a pound of flesh because your computer is selling because of the fact that the supplier is a powerful brand. Similarly, we know, you know, that there could be maybe 1% or 2% of the market which runs on Linux and other things, but everybody else is using Microsoft. So Microsoft has a huge base, and you cannot sell your computer without Microsoft. So these are what the conversation about a buyer and supplier is. Let me open up for some questions if you guys have. Anybody wanting to have a question? I don't know if somebody raised a hand or so. All good? Okay, perfect. So beyond that, now we talked about suppliers, we talked about buyers. The third thing that we're going to be talking about is the threat of substitutes or new entrants. I don't know. Let's see what comes up here. Suppliers, substitutes. Substitutes is tomorrow you could be substituted by something else. Like we were discussing, the oil exporting companies or countries have had a great run, have always had a great run. They knew how to manipulate the pricing. They knew how to get along with it. But at one point, there was always the thing saying that the prices of oil could come down if there was shale oil or fracking oil, which was further discovered. So what would OPEC do? OPEC would manipulate the pricing to make sure that they always had the control of the market. But now when you have electric or solar, or you have other kinds of alternates coming in, their future is at doubt. So substitutes always come from unexpected places. Who would have ever thought in the film industry that I could be wiped out by something called an OTT platform? So substitutes come in because they are not direct rivals. They make very difficult for you to anticipate such kind of a replacement coming up. And substitution doesn't always mean that you would get a price-oriented substitute. The substitute need not always be a price thing. You could have high-speed trains which could cost more, but they can be a substitute for flying. That's exactly what one of you were mentioning, is that now if I have better trains flying in, going in, then it is possible for me. Yes, maybe I pay more for going in this high-speed train, but eventually I might get a better thing. Then again, the issue of any substitution could be that there is a switching cost for substitution. How easy is it for you to switch? Some of the substitutes may be very difficult to switch. How do I switch from an existing solution to a new solution? So if the cost of substitution is large, then the replacement or the new entrant will become a bit of a problem. I hope you guys are following up with me on this, because at least there are going to be quite a few questions coming in, and possibly for you to analyze a case study. Okay, so we have discussed about buyer power, supplier power, then we have discussed about the product itself being substituted in some other way, and then that could impact your profitability eventually, because everything boils down to profitability. The second that happens is entry barriers. What happens when there is a barrier to entry? Whereas the entry barriers would mean that how the whole industry would make it difficult for a new entrant to enter, to get into a market. Now, when it becomes very difficult for a new player to enter into the market, it will result in what happens when there is a barrier to entry. When there's a barrier to entry, there's going to be a huge fight for the market share, because you have the industry rising the prices to ensure that there is no newcomer coming in. So for let's say we were talking about the Microsoft OS. Why isn't there a new OS coming in? Is because the cost of an entry to a new market would be so challenging that the whole economies of scale, I've tried to underline quite a few of them here. The economies of scale would make it very difficult for a new entrant to come in. That is what is happening to the case of Microsoft having a significant position in the market, because the cost of switching you from, let's say, to a new thing, the entire developmental cost is going to be very, very challenging. Like, for example, drug companies have been sitting here and fighting about with R&D and IP and pricing like that. So when a new entrant comes in, what is the switching cost that is involved? What is it that it will cost for somebody to switch from a PC to a Mac or vice versa? It will cost them so many man hours of learning, relearning. So the question is, who is going to fight for this? So Apple, being a smaller market shareholder, will actually give you incentives to switch you away from Microsoft. But Microsoft may not really be interested in switching a small percentage of players from Apple to them. So this is the other portion, which is about the entry barrier. The last probably that we are talking about it is rivalry. Rivalry is a very, very dangerous thing. What is rivalry? Rivalry is within the industry, there is intense competition. When there's intense competition within the industry, yeah, somebody saying something? Okay. When there's intense competition within the industry, what happens? You are doing anything to make sure that you are there, you are existing, and you are relevant. So what would you do? There are a couple of things that you can do. Rivalry will bring in price competition. Rivalry will make you spend more on advertising. Rivalry will bring in new product introduction, and rivalry will bring in increased customer support. And all of these were visible in the rivalry or the market fight between Jio and Airtel. Price is the most damaging among all the rivalry, as you can see here. Why is price such an important thing, especially when it comes to perishable goods? What do you mean by perishable goods? Normally, perishable goods are considered like vegetables or fish or anything that can. We are not talking about those kind of perishable goods. We are talking about airline seats. Now, let's say you're manufacturing motors and you had a bad year because of the pandemic. You may have an inventory which is there, but you haven't lost those motors. You haven't lost those plugs or any other physical device that you have done. Is that maybe sitting in your inventory for a bad year or a bad monsoon or a bad sale period. But when it comes to things like airline seats, that's inventory gone. Today, if you are flying with 20% of your seats unoccupied, it's gone. It's a perishable product. You have to sell it for today's flight number dash, dash, dash. You cannot recreate that flight. Then, so with hotel rooms, I may have the hotel rooms, but if I could not sell the hotel room over the weekend, it's no way that I can do that. It's a perishable product. But if I did not sell any physical product, it is possible for me to sell it like the cars. Cars may have had a bad year because of the pandemic, but cars are lying there in the factories. They can be brought out and sold. But in an airline industry, why the rivalry is so high is because the product is perishable. If you cannot sell that product within that, before the flight takes off, it's gone. The product is gone. The percentage of profitability is gone. And hence, you are fighting to make sure that everything that you have, which has a small window of sale, is able to get along. So that is what happens in terms of rivalry. Rivalry is very, very tough when the industry has many players, but all of them in a very competing level. There is no leader. There's no leader. I mean, we're talking about airlines, we might say that Jet Airways, SpiceJet, and all three of them may be fighting with almost equal kind of a pricing. But if there was a market leader, that would be a difficult situation. So rivalry is greatest in an industry when there are many competitors, and these competitors are roughly of equal size and power. Now, other parameter for rivalry is that the market is not growing very much. You're struggling for the market to grow. If the market is growing, there are more and more people coming in. You are not fighting to sell your airline seat. You're actually more interested in increasing the number of airlines and aircrafts. That's a different situation. Here, you are fighting because there's a slow growth of the market. And next parameter is you can't even walk out of it. Is it possible for you to overnight go ahead and say, I'm closing the airline? No, there's a lot of challenges that happen out there. You have so much of money committed to the whole thing. So exit barriers out there. And finally, when the market is irrational, why is a market irrational? Is because people will continue to run that industry even if it is making loss. For example, BSNL or for example, lots of other private airlines, or no, sorry, lots of other government airlines, because it's a pride of the country. You have Air India running in, you have Air Nepal, you have Bhutan Airlines. Why would there be an airline called Bhutan? And who is he competing with? Is he competing with Emirates? Is he competing with Singapore? No. They are competing because of a national pride and existence. So we talked about a barrier to entry, rivalry, and yeah, so this is more of the same thing. And finally, we just concluding that the 5 forces are not industry specific. They are generally encompasses all industries, and it is possible for us to keep an eye on these to notice what is happening to the industry. The fear of substitutes could reduce price. The threat of entry could reduce pricing, and rivalry could impact both cost and supplier power, right? So I hope you guys have been following me on this. If you have any questions, we can get into a more detailed discussion. Let me ask a few of you. Ajay, are you with me? Gopika? There's been absolute silence.
I'm there with you, sir.
Yeah? Yeah, you guys with, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So if you're done with this, is there anything on the chat box? Okay, no problem. So normally, like you were asking in the previous class about any format of questions, there would be on the longer format a few questions coming up on the Porter's 5 forces. So we may have to explain them, maybe give 1 or 2 examples to it, and have a look at it. So if we go back and look at the questions that I tried to induce you into, what is really happening with the movie theaters is that the movie theaters are going through a substitute, right? There's a new entrant who's coming in. Whatever it is, the movie theaters have had their good day. They are more or less out. How much ever they may want to improvise, it could be a very selective audience who might want to come to a movie theater. It has had its run. There were good days for the typewriter. There were good days for so many other products, good days for fixed line phones, but they're gone now. So that is it, that they could be outdated and substitute. Same thing with oil exporting companies. One problem that they faced was there was a lot of rivalry between the companies, between the oil exporting companies or countries. I keep using the word companies. So if you notice that when the price of the oil kept falling to almost below 0, these oil exporting countries said that let's stop our production so that there is demand which develops. While it was a great idea, it didn't find many buyers for it because the countries itself were in a big shock. Their economy was going down because of a pandemic. And then they said, on top of it, if we do not export, we won't even have the existing income coming in. So they said, to hell with this great idea, we need to survive today. There was a lot of rivalry between them, and the competition between them resulted in they breaking out. And of course, tomorrow, the future is that there could be a substitute that could come up and replace them. Google, what is happening is that when you have a voluminous base, when the base is so strong, the cost of replacing you is going to be very, very tough. That is somewhere here. Is that the cost of switching you, the entry barriers are very, very high. Everybody is sitting on WhatsApp. How much ever we try to move ourselves from WhatsApp to Duo or WhatsApp to Telegram, it didn't really work for a long time, because while I might be open to moving in, the rest of the crowd is not open to moving in. So the cost of entry, barriers to entry is going to be so huge that the existing players continue to be able to make an impact on the market. The third was the same thing about Geo, is that when Geo, the same thing about Microsoft, is that they are riding on a huge market base. Third is entry of Geo. Yeah, the moment a player comes in, the first impact that it has is on the price, better quality of service, better customer relationship and all that. Okay, done. Good. So we are done with this. We will move into another subject, 238. We'll go up to 3 and then we'll take a break. New share. What do we do now? Global business or competition? Okay, we'll continue with this. Okay, now we are getting into a subject which is also very intense. And now the next question to you is very, very simple, is that why do the only primary motive of any organization is profitability? Now, how do I increase profitability? Profitability can only be increased by expanding the market. Profitability can only be increased by adding in new clients. Growth is an inevitable lifeline of any organization. If the organization is not growing, the organization is going to die. We did 100 crores this year. We have to do 120 crores or 140 crores to be able to sustain, stay in the market and be ahead. Otherwise, we will be beaten away. Now, growth can only come in many forms. Growth can come if I am able to increase the size of the pie. Growth can come if more and more people are willing to buy mobile phones or willing to buy new SIM connections. But where are we today? Today, everybody has got a phone. Everybody's got a mobile connection. But I have to grow. My organization cannot survive if the organization doesn't grow. So how will I grow? I will only be able to grow at the cost of my competitor. So for me to grow, I have to beat my competition. I have to go and enter into a market where my competitor has a market share, where I have to penetrate rival markets and strongholds to survive. Otherwise, I will not be able to grow. I have to constantly find out ways of increasing my primary market share. And sometimes, if that is what I am thinking, the competition is also thinking the same. The competition is constantly thinking, how do I grow? How do I grow? I can only grow if I can beat this guy. And that guy is thinking, how do I grow if I can beat this guy? So constantly there is battle going on for market control. And remember, market control eventually results in profitability. So the way these wars are fought, there are 4 or 5 ways in which these wars are fought. These wars are fought in the domains called feint, gambit. They are here: feint, gambit, onslaught, and contest. What are these? These are the methods, maybe the methods you punch your opponent or the way you fight your opponent, but these are standard techniques that are used. Let's learn about each one of them. But before we get into learning them, let's understand what is it under the term called competing under strategic interdependence. Now, what is strategic interdependence? Look at this particular scenario. Are you guys there? Very quiet out there. One of you can let me know, unmute yourself and say, I'm there.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
We are.
Good. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Feedback is important. Feedback is important. So there are 2 things that's happening. There is your competing market and there is what is interests you. There is the markets are, they could be products or they could be markets. They could be anything. This could be product A, product B, product C, product, all that. Or this could be European market. This could be Asian market. This could be some other market. It could be anything. It doesn't matter. So as you grow, you are growing in areas which are attractive to you. What does that mean? I want to grow into this market. There was some conversation that we were thinking, I don't know, I don't recall with whom I was talking, saying that how do we expand into newer markets? So as you enter into a new market, there are 2 things that happen. Your competitor sees you enter that market. A market which is very, very attractive to you is B. B is the market that you're greatly interested in attacking. The competitive reactness is that the competitor, as I told you when we did, what did we do? When we did a BCG matrix, we realized that some of our products are dogs, some of our products are stars, some of our products are cash cows. But if you enter into a market which for the competitor is not a key market, is not a market that he's going to be very much interested in, then the reaction of the competitor is going to be a little bit low. But let's say you go into a market like C, the attractiveness to you is great. The competitor's reaction is going to be also great. Is no way will I allow you to enter into this market because that market is dear to me. I have nurtured this market, I have held on to this market, and I'll fight tooth and nail to hold on to that market. So for you to understand this better, let's look at the scenario of Unilever versus Procter & Gamble. Unilever wants to enter many areas. Procter & Gamble has certain areas where it's playing. Now look at this. If Unilever wants to enter into European food market, let's say it wants to enter into a food, the amount of reactiveness for Procter & Gamble is going to be very low. They are not really, they are there in European food. They have a lot of stores which have P&G food, but that's not their primary market. They're going to say, okay, let him enter, no problem. It's a 0.1% of my interest level or whatever that is. I would let it go. But for you, it's a huge and very attractive market. There's not going to be many fight. It could be slowly that you might just enter into that market and Procter & Gamble may not fight you. But try entering into American personal care. That's a market extremely dear to Procter & Gamble. Or try entering into female hygiene products. Huge market for Procter & Gamble, they have a lot of focus on that. They will ensure that they'll do anything to hold on to that market and possibly even kill you from entering to this market. So points that we are discussing is there could be your attractiveness versus reactiveness. So some markets you enter, we don't care, but in some markets are very, they will fight tooth and nail to enter into that market. Now, among the very few points that we discussed, we said it's going to be feint, gambit, flank, onslaught, and contest. What is feint? Or where is this? Here. What is onslaught? The very word onslaught means that you take a huge attack or what is called carpet bombing into that market. Let's say you are going to go ahead and do everything, huge price cutting, heavy marketing expenditure, major promotions, all to ensure that you onslaught into that market. You are going to fight it. This is exactly what happened between Jio and Airtel. They are going to be very strong. They're going to come and hit you. But what happens is that when you do a huge onslaught, the existing player, the incumbent player, two things could happen. They could be taken up by this whole huge onslaught. They may fight you, they may not fight you, or they might just have to surrender. There are only two options left. For example, there is a constant fight between Pepsi and Cola. Each of them are doing heavy fight to ensure that they get into the market. And nobody is going to allow you to hang on to it. They will fight for their own share. But there could be a lot of instances where a huge onslaught could result in somebody becoming a winner. For example, at one point, we had Intel, which was also manufacturing DRAM chips. They had a good market share. At that time, the lot of Japanese companies came in and started to dominate the market. Now, Intel could have done two things. Intel could have fought the market or said that, oh my God, there's no way that I can compete with Japanese pricing, Japanese technology, Japanese quality. I'll rather move out of it. So Intel said, okay, guys, I'm no longer interested in this market. Let me move into another market. So that was a huge fight on an onslaught. One other occasion that happened was when Wipro tried to enter the American banking, securities, financial services market. Remember, Wipro has been doing very well in the Indian market. So they decide to enter the American market. But the American market is strongly held by IBM and Accenture. So when Wipro entered in that market, IBM said, there's no way that I'm going to allow Wipro to enter this market. We will fight tooth and nail. And they started underquoting. They started to slash prices without even margins. They reduced their margin cost. I remember one of the interviews in which Wipro said that it's a huge gamble. It's a huge gamble, but there's no way that IBM or Accenture is going to allow a new player to enter into this market. Eventually, Wipro has been consistent. Wipro has been holding on. Wipro, despite the huge fight back because the customer or the competition reactiveness is huge, they were able to fight them out, and Wipro now has a good, reasonable market share on the American banking and financial markets. So this is what happens in an onslaught. An onslaught is a direct attack through every known means of marketing, price reduction, and everything else to ensure that there is a result. But many a time there are results, but many a time the war is constantly on and going. I took the example of here, if you can see this, a fine print is that Krishna versus Jarasandha. I don't know how many of you know this story. It's that at the end of the fact that Krishna killed Kamsa, Jarasandha constantly attacked the kingdom, which is not Dwaraka, Mathura, I think. Mathura, where he was there. And many times the war went on. Many times the war went on. Every time Krishna and his people trying to defend it. At one time, Krishna said, this is not going to go on. There's nothing wrong. And overnight, he and the entire Yadava clan moved out from there to Dwaraka. Surrendering in a way, but then they said, better sense prevailed. How long can I keep fighting a battle where I'm going to be bleeding forever? That is one of the reasons why the name for Krishna is called Ranchod or something, the guy who ran away from the battle. So this is onslaught. The second thing that comes up is contest. If onslaught is carpet bombing, contest is a little more structured. It's not that much of bloodshed. It is a little more organized battle that happens between two of the competing industries or two of the competing companies, where it is more subtle, it's more organized, and hence, therefore, less costly. So one of while there are, you must also remember that contest, onslaught, fiend, all these are not happening every day in the market. And they happen over a long period of time. There are few examples to quote from, but we'll try to give you a good example. One of the examples is that if you noticed that for a long time, it was the DVD market which was holding on to the movie demand, meaning that you may produce the best of the movies, and these movies are getting converted into then imprinted on DVDs. And who was making money? Not the producers, not the distributors, but it was the DVD industry, which was probably renting it out to people, saying that you rent the DVD for a day or two and give me $50 or $1. And they were the ones who was making more money. Now, Warner Brothers noticed that it's a big, is there something coming up on this? Magada, okay, thank you. Okay. So one of the things that Warner Brothers realized is, look, what is the situation? We are making the best of the movies, but we are not making the money. It's the DVD guy who is selling, reselling, and re-renting and renting it. And out of a single $4, $5 DVD, he's making a lot of money. How do we battle this out? How do we get people to come and watch the movie? But that's a big challenge. There's no way that people would want to come and watch the movie. The pleasure and joy of sitting with your family, with popcorn and things, and at your own timelines was difficult. So Warner Brothers said that the way we have to do it, normally in a contest, it's a technology which overpowers. So Warner Brothers said that if I can make the cost of the DVD so low, if I can make the cost of the DVD so low that the customer has a choice between by renting a DVD or buying a DVD for a marginal cost, additional cost, he might end up buying the DVD instead. So what Warner Brothers did was to disrupt the industry they came up with the slashing the price of the DVDs to such an extent that it was better for you to buy the DVD rather than rent it out. So in a way, they were able to fight the competition by coming out with an alternate, equally challenging fight between somebody who was trying to dominate the market. So that is contest. The third one that you have is guerrilla campaign. Now, what is guerrilla campaign? Guerrilla campaign is, as the very word indicates, is fighting from the back, fighting with or under the radar fight which happens. Now, the example of guerrilla campaigning is one which is here, but actually should have probably changed this slide. There's a better example that I would like to share with you all, which is we'll finish guerrilla campaign, and after that we'll take a break and then we'll continue. Okay? Can one of you tell me, have we done the pricing chapter completely, or is there something left?
No, we did it completely, sir.
We did it completely. Okay, good. Right. So guerrilla campaign is something that happens without you even noticing it. Overnight, you notice that there's a guy who's all over the place. There's a guy who's all over the place, and your competition has come in unannounced and gets into the market. The tactic here is to get into unattractive areas and fight the battle. While I get there, I like to narrate a particular story which will probably give you an example of what it is. There was the time when Chanakya was trying to fight the Nandas. I think, I don't know how good is my history. He was trying to join hands with Chandragupta to fight for the Magadha Empire, to fight and remove the Nanda dynasty or whatever that is. While he was constantly attacking the capital, every time he attacked the capital, he had to lose out. Every attempt towards the capital resulted in he being thrown out. So one fine day, when Chanakya was sitting below a tree and wondering what's happening and how do I get into fighting this very strong kingdom, it so happened that possibly below the same tree, there was a mother and small son who were sitting and having their food. The food was some rice and hot sambar. And so, a typical way the food is served, there's a hill or a heap of rice, and the hot sambar is served on the top. And the small boy was trying to put his hand right at the center of that heap, burning his fingers. So the mother tells the son that this is not the way to eat it. What you need to do is to attack it from the sides where it's a little bit cooler and the rasam has just started dripping in. There it is possible for you to mix it and get in. So that conversation seemed to have hit on Chanakya. And Chanakya then started attacking the border villages. And now the border villages, you don't know what's happening in the kingdom, right? In the kingdom, you're only worried about what's happening in the primary cities and all that. And you know what's happening all the time. You notice that the Chinese are slowly trying to enter into the borders, and any examples like that all work well. So over a period of time, you notice that all the bordering villages in the kingdom has already been taken over by Chanakya, Chandragupta and his warriors. So that is one way of guerrilla campaign. Now this, as an example, one of the very large companies in China, or the white goods company in China, is called Haier. Haier is also now having a significant presence in the Indian market. Now, Haier's success story in the American white goods industry is so much talked about that there are lots and lots of case studies which are mentioned about. Now, when Haier entered into the market, they realized that they were fighting giants. They were fighting people who have had significant presence in the market. They were fighting, name them, maybe General Electric or Whirlpool or whoever it is, or the Mitsubishis or whoever. They were white goods are goods which are air conditioners, refrigerators, and things like that. Okay, televisions, washing machines, they're all called white goods. And there was no way that Haier could get even an entry into this market, because the retail sales was much controlled, the shopping mall branding was well controlled, presencing was well controlled. But what Haier did was something that is for all of us to listen to, is that Haier said that we will attack a non-standard market. Now, what is a non-standard market? One of the things that the Americans love to do is to travel. We can travel, long weekend travel, Thanksgiving Day travel, and all that stuff. And when they travel, they stay in these hotels or motels. Maybe you have all these motels from Patels and all that. These hotels and motels are small, maybe 2-star, 3-star kind of places to stay. You just stay there after a long drive, stay there for a day or two, and then move forward. Now, what they did was they went and replaced or sold their Haier washing machines, Haier television, Haier refrigerators, Haier air conditioners to these motel guys. So what happens is that when you are on your travel with your family and you stay in one of those hotels, you start experiencing the air conditioning, you start experiencing the refrigerator, which is there in the room, and of course, you're experiencing the television. Now, how many times have we felt nasty about the kind of air conditioner which was there in the hotel room when we went? Oh my God, it was goddamn noisy. I'm not going to the hotel again. And there are lots of hotels in my list that I'm not going in because the air conditioners don't work or the air conditioners are very noisy. But what was the experience of those people who went into the hotels and motels which had the Haier? Well, they said, wow, the air conditioner was brilliant. A very nice place. I love the air conditioner. I love the television. The television had great picture quality or whatever those parameters are. Or that the refrigerator was very good, very nice. It seemed to chill the beer very fast. So what happened was, over a period of time, when the potential buyer walked in to buy the Whirlpool or the GE or the Mitsubishi product, he also noticed somewhere in the corner, because these guys don't get good rack space, somewhere in the corner was a Haier washing machine, was a Haier television. The salesman was not very keen to sell, but the sale has already been done. You've already converted you, because last time when you visited, you experienced the air conditioner for 2 days. You played around with the television for the 2 nights that you stayed. So it was possible for Haier to get into a very, very intensely competing market by making what is called a guerrilla campaign and thus getting into the market share. So this is about guerrilla market. We will take a break. I'll give you about About 15 minutes is fine.
Yeah, fine.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so
Yes, sir.
we'll finish that. We'll come back and discuss the remaining two. Then we will do branding and we are done. Okay.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, fine.
Okay, I'll pause the recording. Okay, good. So you guys got this, right? There is onslaught and contest, gorilla, fiend. Fiend is, I'm trying to make it look funny. And again, we're not overemphasizing on all these stories, okay? But remember, you should know that this is what happens in a market. And if you really want to read more exhaustively on competition, there are lots of books, but there's probably only one book called Art of War by Sun Tzu. He talks about what he does is actually Art of War is truly an art of war. It's a very ancient book. And the modern interpreters of them have done that is to actually take this and show that this is what happens in the market. And it's very true, you know, all the time there is market rivalry, there's market fighting, market espionage. For a long, I don't know, there was a big fight. I don't recall the event, but there was a big fight between Bajaj and TVS on some of their technologies being copied. And so, and idea is that I can grow, of course, by expanding the market, but it's easier to snatch an existing customer, right? So that I don't have to educate. I know what the market is, and I can really do it. So everybody is hungry about snatching the market. So one of the other thing which comes up is feint. Feint meaning is that you become very deceptive. Very deceptive. You will read through all of this. And you may not find that this example is so very easy to read. It's also because there are not too many examples that come up in the market. And for a new example to come, it must take years of development. It takes years of planning and then noticing it and then getting it published as a case study. So it takes a while. So some of the examples is that the example I said is kahin pe nigahe, kahin pe nishana, and then looking London, talking Tokyo. Meaning is that you will get your competitor to fight with you in a battle somewhere else, but your intent is to attack a bigger market. I don't know how many of you have actually seen the movie called Pearl Harbor or everything related to that event which triggered bringing America into the war by the Japanese attacking the Hawaiian place called Pearl Harbor. So what really happened in that was the Japanese set up a huge contingent of naval aircrafts and naval ships towards a particular direction. And that was primarily to get these people, the existing military in Hawaii, to start following them. While the intention was not that, the intention was to actually send a few fleets to go ahead and bomb the Pearl Harbor. And the Americans were caught unaware because they were chasing a very deceptive target. So similarly, even in a market which is very controlled, for example, Adidas has a great European presence. Nike has a great American presence. So anything that happens, they will fight the battle to ensure that their supremacy in these markets continue to remain. Or what happened between Dell and the other players is that they pushed, Dell pushed Hewlett Packard and IBM to get into fighting for a market share in PCs by dropping prices, luring their customers. And when HP is fighting this, Dell actually went behind another more established market, which they were able to get into. So hard to explain with an example, but primarily a feint is when you get your competition to focus elsewhere while your interest is in another market. If that is done, Gambit is also a way of playing a game, and it involves real tough strategy. As the very first line says, is that Gambit is not for the faint heart. Now, listen to me, and probably the only example, and I can explain it as best as I can, is that if you look at two large players, not today, but 25 years back or 20 years back, the industry of shaving products, or the industry for the men shaving products, was primarily distributed between Bic and Gillette, with Gillette having a substantial market share. Apart from having presence in this market, the other market that both of them were having was the lighter industry market. Both Gillette and Bic were having significant market share in the shaving products and in the lighter products. Now, if you look at the Gillette products, today, Gillette is virtually the greatest, probably the monopolistic player in this market. Now, how does Gillette do it? Gillette is giving away the razor sticks free, but they're charging it heavily on their cartridges. Just like the story of HP printers, the printer may come to you free, but then you need to pay through your nose for the cartridges or the printer ribbon or whatever that is called. And Bic then noticed that this was a market where Gillette was having a huge, significant, high margin market share, and they were also struggling to get it. That was the time when Bic said, let's disrupt the market. What did they do? And for those of you who will remember, is that they came up with what is known as disposable razors. What are disposable razors? Disposable razors are cheap plastic intrusions of products which had a razor or a couple of blades to the end. And they were good. You could use it a couple of times and then you throw it. It was very, very, very cheap. Now the market took to this very well, and everybody started going behind the big disposable razors. Now Gillette had to fight it. They cannot sit there. And one of the strategies that Gillette has is called ape the competitor, meaning that anybody does anything in that market, maybe in all the markets that Gillette has. And Gillette also has, I think, a significant say in the battery market. And so they also have, I think, the Energizer or something else, which is, or Duracell, which is also a Gillette company. So what they do is, whenever anybody else or a new entrant or disruptor comes into the market with something unique, they will do it, even if it doesn't make market sense, because they want to make sure that they are in every way fighting the competition. So when Big came up with disposable razors, the first thing Gillette did was to come up with their own disposable razors. And if you guys would react or recall, 10 or 7, 8 years back, there were a lot of disposable razors in the market because Gillette wanted to play the game along. Now, everybody knows that disposable razors is not good business. Your market share is dipping. You don't really make money. The money was in the cartridges that Gillette sold, and they were making if you didn't have the right cartridge, it wouldn't sit into the razor stick, and they kept on upgrading their models. That was a lovely business for them. This business of getting into disposable razors was killing them and killing the industry. That was when Gillette calls Big over and says, hey guys, let's have coffee together and let's discuss this. So Gillette says, listen, we were leading a good, nice life. You come in with these disposables, you push us on the disposables, and we both are bleeding now. Why don't we come to a compromise? What is a compromise? The compromise, Gillette said, was that you move out of the shaving market or the disposable razor or the razor market. And we will move out of every other market that we are competing with you, be it the pen or the lighter business. So that way, you will not interfere in our great business that we are in, and we will not play any competing role in the market that you are having a significant presence. So that act of releasing or surrendering a certain market share or a certain product to a competitor to ensure that your other product lines continue to do well is called a gambit. But that's very risky. That's very risky because sometimes the guys can come back and then hit you. And now what did you notice is that the moment Big walked out of the disposable razors, Gillette stopped producing disposable razors. They are no longer available. And now we have to go back and buy them. The more expensive, the more profitable version for it. So this is the example of a gambit. Finally, harvesting. What is harvesting is now very easy for us to understand, especially post-pandemic and post-development of vaccines. Harvesting is dividing the entire geographical area into certain ownerships and allowing a singular player to have a market play. That means to say what happened in the case of giving the rights to manufacture Covishield to Serum Institute of India and saying that in India and in XYZ countries, you will supply, whereas somebody else will supply other countries. There's no competition. You get a good price. You are the opportunity to extract any profits that you can make out of it, and nobody is stepping into anybody else's shoe. So these are 4 or 5 or 6 of them: onslaught, contest, guerrilla campaign, feint, gambit, and harvesting are the methods in which companies fight to ensure that they have a market share, because market share results in profitability, and profitability is the primary motive for any company. Any questions before we move into the next topic?
Can you repeat feint again? Sorry, Vimal. Can you repeat feint for me?
Wait, which one?
Feint, sir, feint.
Feint. Where is feint? Feint. Feint is designed to divert the defender's attention. Feint is when you fight with for you to go back, you need to look at to explain fine slightly better, you need to look at these two markets. Assuming if you have understood this market very well, you know what happens when Unilever gets into European food business. Unilever, Procter and Gamble will not care about it. But if Unilever gets into American personal care, Procter and Gamble will come and fight with you. So what Unilever does is that their interest is Asia, Pacific, Africa personal care. So what they do is they fight with you, or they fight with Procter and Gamble in the American personal care. So probably they put in a few $1 million and a huge marketing team and a lot of advertising campaign that Procter and Gamble says, hey, listen, these guys are getting into my core market, my core industry, my core profitability. So they then will get their resources to move in and start fighting it. So while they are focusing on this battle, the intent of Unilever is not to fight this battle. The intent of Unilever is to get into Asia Pacific personal care. So while the battle is going on and your focus is diverted out there, you have Unilever getting in and taking a share of this market. And overnight, you notice that while I'm defending this market, I seem to have lost out on this market. Very easy to explain. How does it work? It's not something that I do decide today and it happens tomorrow. It's a long, drawn-out battle. It's only possible if you know your industry well. It's only possible if you know your competition well. It's only possible if you have the fighting capability on a long, drawn battle.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
yeah. So I don't know how many of you guys play a game in which you divert the guy and he's supposed to hit you. We used to play the game when we were young. Is that you assume, especially in a cold winter day, you assume that there's a small heating point, and then you're trying to warm your hands, and the other guy has an opportunity to slap you. So, so you take away your hand. So you try to divert the guy's attention and get it. So, but I hope I'm able to explain that. Anything else?
Right. So giving the game example that you gave, I play soccer, and we do the strategy thing because when you have an attack. So talking about the topic here, you have to divert your opponent's concentration so that you can achieve and move forward from them. That is what feint is.
Correct. These are these take a long time for you to notice them. So you might have noticed some of these happening. For example, I can tell you that overnight you will see somebody getting into a very significant presence in a certain market where nobody was even thought of them, and they get into a new market. So it's very hard to define current examples because these things take at least 5-6 years of long drawn battles before they come out as such. It could be more like while I can give you possibly one example is that while it's a very contested market for the bottom of the segment, auto industry, where everybody is trying to fight with for the Alto, Hyundai, or the other kind of a market space. A new entrance also gets there, like they say Renault will come up with their own, what is their car called? The low-cost car, and they fight it. and everybody is trying to save that market. Now, if you look at Maruti, Maruti will be most hurt. Maruti will be most hurt not when you fight a 40 lakh market. Maruti is least bothered about that market. Maruti will be most hurt when you are fighting the 5, 6, 7 lakh market category, because that is the core category. They have something like 55, 60% market share. So what would you do is that if I were, one example that I can hypothetically create is if I were to be MG or I would be somebody else. So what I would do is I will try to fight that market. I'll come up with a product which is going to get Maruti worried. I'll come up with a product which is a 4 lakh, 5 lakh car component and get Maruti to focus all their energy, better air conditioning, better blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, I would then release a product which is competing with the Swift product. So, but Maruti is focused out there and I start playing around. It looks so funny, right? Why would it be? Of course, Maruti will notice it, but it happens over a period of time if you are able to draw them into a long-standing battle. So that's the closest real-time example that I can think of. Done. Let's move into, before Dave reminds me one more time, right, Dave, that we have to move to another subject. Let me move to, I don't even see that here. Okay, give me 1 minute. Let me open the file. Branding. Okay. New share. Branding. You see this?
We can see it, sir.
Okay. Then give me the answers. You know the answers for these?
Yes, sir. British Petroleum, Toyota, Universal, Unilever, and Nestle, Pepsi.
This one?
Amazon.
Accenture.
AT&T.
What is that? This one? Somebody said that. Go ahead.
Someone said AT&T, sir.
AT&T is above.
AT&T.
That is this one.
This?
No, that is
Sun Microsystems.
Columbia.
Sun Microsystems, right?
Sun Microsystems.
And,
Mitsubishi.
and 6A?
Linux.
Linux. And what about this? B1 or 1B?
That's new to me. Boeing.
Brilliant. Very good.
BMW.
Yeah, these are all brands, right? These are all brands. And what about these?
Again, BSNL.
BSNL.
No, that is Tata. That is Reliance. Reliance Communications.
Which Reliance is this?
Reliance Communications. Anil
Telecom.
Anil Ambani. Okay, good. And this is?
Tanishq.
That is Tanishq.
Tanishq.
All the women jumped up and answered that. Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody who does
Aadhaar card.
Aadhaar card.
Okay. And this is?
T-Series.
Airport
Indian
Authority.
Airlines. Indian Airlines.
Airport Authority of
Air India.
And this
Asian Paints.
Asian Paints.
Asian Paints.
Which is this?
Target.
Can't. Whoever answered this need not take the test. I'll give you A+.
Which one, sir?
This. Oh, come on, yeah. What is this?
Doordarshan, sir.
Canara Bank.
Canara Bank.
Canara Bank. Hello.
Canara Bank.
The bank is above.
Huge brands. You don't know this brand?
Sir, is Doordarshan?
No.
Doordarshan will not come that way.
Union Bank.
I'm giving you a lot of hint. I said whoever identifies this brand, I will give 100 marks.
ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಲೋಟದಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬಿಸಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಅಡಿಗೆ ಮನೆ ತಗೊಂಬ ಶಿಂಕತ್ರ ಇದೆ
100 marks.
Union Bank of India.
Okay, of course, I can go on and on and on that. So these are brands, right? These are brands. By the very logo, you can identify them. They carry a lot of weight. The moment you see this, it reminds you of Asian Paints. This is, of course, the logo of my company. It's not that big. And so I just put this up to.
Yeah, so that is the reason we are not finding it, sir. Thank you so much.
So see, some brands are instant recall. Some brands are instant recall. That's why I said I'll give you 100 marks if you do it. So branding, what is branding? What do you think? What is a brand? Give me an example. We just had enough thing. Why would you want to have a brand? How does branding work? What about the advantages of a strong brand? What will a brand bring you?
So the brand actually, one associates with themselves as a consumer. Suppose if I'm there and I use a product, a particular product, I feel, if I associate with a particular brand, that ye give.
Right, very good. Yeah, so the brand, if you look at it, I don't know if I mentioned this to you guys, is that the fight for or Tata Motors coming back with their struggle with Indica and all that?
Yes, Professor. I think you told.
Brands get associated with the wrong product. It was great for Tata to be associated with one of the case studies that I would normally have done if we, in my initial classes, was the case study of the success of Tanishq. Okay, now Tanishq case study is a typical marketing case study, and I'll let's see, maybe we can do it sometime later or something.
Yeah, though.
Yeah. So what happened in the case of Tanishq was that when Tanishq or Tata, forget Tanishq, when Tata entered the market of organized jewelry, people said a steel banane wala company, this automotive company, what will it be able to understand the jewelry market? So Tata was just associated with Tata Steel, Tata Locomotive, Tata Telco, everything else, but not the branding of a jewelry company. Of course, they had the advantage of the Tata title. The closest that they could come up with in terms of connecting with the customer is that they made the fine watches. And if they could make fine watches, hopefully they will be able to make some fine jewelry as well. So sometimes branding is a legacy that you have to live with, and forever you will have to fight that brand because you have a bad image associated with the brand. Now, it took Tata, as we rightly discussed, a long period to move away from the Indica or the Sumo logo or the branding, to move and say that we are a company which owns the finest and the biggest car company in the world, and we now have great products. It takes time. So that is how branding works. And the advantage of a strong brand, as you rightly said, what is one advantage that you get out of a strong brand? Anybody else? The advantage is that you get some kind of a superiority associated.
Customer assurance.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, we'll discuss all of that. Yes.
Loyalty.
Which was that?
I said loyalty.
Loyalty, absolutely. Many a time I believe I'm the one who believes in experimenting. I tell my wife that we go to a place called Namdhari's in my neighborhood, and I tell her that let's buy that Namdhari milk. She said, no, Nandini milk. But have you tried the Namdhari milk? No. But how do you make a conclusion? No, there is a brand that is associated with saying Nandini milk is pure. So you can ride on a brand, even on a bad product, but that's temporarily. Then you have brand equity. Then you have brand extensions, and then you are evaluating into brand extensions.
Sir, and brand goodwill?
Brand goodwill, obviously, brand goodwill is what will be the next thing. I mean, I don't want to get too long into this particular slide, but HMD versus Rolex, Bata versus this, Starbucks versus CCD. There are all kinds of examples here going on. We'll not spend too much of time. Amitabh Bachchan versus Amir Khan or anybody else, it could be. How do you compare each of them? Each of them have their own branding. I always recall Arshad Varsi, right? Arshad Varsi is the name of the film actor.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I saw him act in a very serious role in a movie. But every time I see him, the only name that comes to my mind is Circuit. Yeah. So that is branding. The guy is trying to fight that brand that he is associated with it. But it's very difficult. It's very difficult. So you rather surrender and become a villain in all your movies or a side actor. So branding is something that's very sticky, and you need to hang on to a brand, and people are willing to pay a lot of money to buy the brand. The brand like Horlicks or the brand like, I don't know, there's so many brands which have changed hands over a period of time. More
Red label. Red label, for example.
Red label, for example. Yeah, obviously. Right. It brings in the very fact that if I tell you a brand, something happens to your mind. Like we saw, no? The moment we say Asian Paints, we look at it, you say, oh my God, do you think I need to get my house painted or not? Or let's say I showed you a BSNL brand. Today, if I showed you a BSNL brand, oh my God, I think my phone line is down or something. So brands have good legacy, brands have bad legacies. So they get around. Big Bazaar was a great brand at some time. But now Big Bazaar is not probably the best of the brands that you want to be associated with. So what is the role of a brand? It identifies the maker. Just like we said, the very fact that I have Intel inside. And earlier we used to have one of the service guys to come to my office whenever there was a issue of computers. He would come to our office, and I knew what he would do, but he would try to repair it, and he will pull out the Intel Inside sticker from the laptop. Is because I don't know what would he do with it, but he loved to pull it out, and maybe he put it somewhere else and all that. So that, yes.
So if you don't mind, may I interrupt?
Go ahead.
So when you have an Intel Inside logo on your laptop, that means it's still branded and in warranty, right? But if a person comes and services your laptop outside your warranty, or is not a person who is authorized to do that, then he'll pull out that sticker. That means the warranty is lost.
Gone. Yeah, so he will probably
that is the reason.
Pull it out and put it somewhere else. So
Yeah, he'll just throw it off. Kind of remove that. That means that laptop does not have the warranty. It's broken kind of.
So again, the very word Tanish, as I said, that's a brand. That's a brand. The very, you know what this is. The very, if you are conscious about what kind of food you eat, I'll deeply look for the green dot logo. So this is a rule because it identifies you with the manufacturer. It identifies you with the company. It identifies you with it. But what is this logo, by the way? Any idea what this logo is?
So it was a payment app, something called as Stays or something.
The PayPal.
Seen that? Yeah, I don't
Yes.
Okay.
PayPal, I guess.
Japan, is it? No.
Yeah.
This was a payment app called Taze, is what somebody said. And it's true.
Yes. Yes, sir. Yes.
And what happened to that brand?
Didn't work out.
Google Pay. Google took over actually.
Google took over. Okay. Yeah. So why did Google? Actually, it was not Google took over.
No, initially, what I read was initially it was invested more by Google. It was an Indian company kind of thing. And then, they completely acquired it.
Right. So Google, when they came out with their own payment gateway, they did not want to risk the brand name. Google in India has been associated with some of the greatest success stories. Google Glasses are stories which are not in this part of the world. So Google was a great brand, and nobody knew what will happen to the Google. Will the gateway work? Will we be stuck? WhatsApp is still struggling. WhatsApp is still struggling to get their payment gateway authorized, right? So they were afraid whether we will be caught in a regulatory hassle. Will our branding get diluted? Will customers like it? Will we be able to show a differentiation? Why risk a brand? We get to be identified. As you can see, you were struggling to identify Taze with Google. But once Taze picked up, they just switched it. They
Sir,
said,
may I add?
Yeah.
This is Mahesh here. So regarding WhatsApp, the pay has come up. They have got that approved, and you might see WhatsApp Pay, like your other UPI apps. WhatsApp Pay has been approved, and it's
yeah, it is. Even I got a notification.
Yeah, we've got a notification. So yeah, it's approved.
But it's not convincing as yet.
Not convincing yet.
Convincing is it's a UPI app. So convincing is like
and
it's your understanding. It's yours. Take it.
Long journey. It's been a very, very long journey for.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
So that is what is the role of a brand. It identifies the maker.
Very true.
Second is the role of a brand creates barrier to entry. What do you mean by barrier to entry? How many of you know what is a priority pass, or what is Emirates Skywards? When I fly often, I'm rewarded by Emirates saying that, hey, listen, we treat you well because you are a constant flyer. I'll give you Emirates Sky Rewards. Or I'm a huge spender on the credit card, and the credit card guy says, hey Ramesh, why would you want to wait in the airport near the gates? We'll give you lounge access.
True, sir.
So that's a brand. I mean, I will tell Mahesh, or I'll tell Millie, hey Millie, let's if we're flying together, I'll meet you at the lounge. And why am I saying this? I'm telling her, I'm trying to show her that I have a priority pass. I have something which is making me unique.
Correct. A difference.
Yeah, makes the difference. Barrier to entry. Have you traveled as much as I have to get the Emirates rewards points? It's such a sticky thing that, I mean, lots of my colleagues and me included have readjusted our business travel only to make sure we stay in that hotel, which will give you that reward, and we fly only by that airline, which will give us that reward because we're crazy about it.
That's very true, sir. Yeah.
And so,
Sir, for the examples which you are giving, even the country club will include because they book everything for you.
Absolutely. Yes, do. Yes, do.
Holidays. Where did you spend your holiday? Mahindra holidays, man. Oh, you cannot afford Mahindra Holidays because only members can go into Mahindra Holidays. So I'm just showing off that I'm different from you. You might just book a Oyo room, but I don't. I'm in Mahindra Holidays. So if you, there was a time when if you travel by an international airline and they put the baggage tag, the guys would not remove the baggage tag.
Yeah, they would show off.
They could show off, right? You want to why? So who is benefiting by the show off? It's the airline.
Yeah.
That's the barrier to entry, signifying that great service. And the one in the bottom is called, you can't see it very well, but what happened was I just introduced this for the very first batch because a lot of them came from a company called Bueller. So what Bueller does is that Bueller has some very fine rice quality check equipments. What they do is every grain of rice is actually photographed and checked for quality and cleared out. It's a huge machine in which a high-speed quality check of the rice is done. So what happens is if this brand Pashupati wants to sell its rice, it wants to tell the world that I have the Bueller Sortex machine certified. So this is one way of saying that I use great products for quality check and things like that. So the role of a brand is to signify quality. The role of the brand is to create barrier to entry. Obviously, right? These are two. Barrier to entry, Emirates, Priority Pass. I don't know how many of you know the movie called Up in the Air. Have you seen the movie Up in the Air?
Yes, sir.
George Clooney, he's running behind points and points. That's what that is about, correct? Then provides competitive advantage. That's the most important thing. Evian water versus Bisleri water. Bisleri to Bisleri hai, Evian to Evian. If that is what is the brand about, is that it gives you an advantage. Most importantly, both of them are selling water, but he's selling water at 120 rupees and we are fighting with the seller saying that why are you taking 2 rupees for cooling on a Bisleri water? That's it. Evian will give you a huge competitive advantage of a great brand and you can actually get a better price premium. That
Even Fiji, sir, small bottle of Fiji costs like $7 to $8.
Yeah, right. So, but you still, right? You still want to buy it. Why? Because you want to experience it, and that's the power of the brand. And Evian water, when the guys at the US Open are sitting and drinking Evian water, what branding comes up to it? So that is what it is. So let's not forget in the conversation that it identifies with the maker, it creates a barrier to entry, it signifies quality, it provides you competitive advantage. You're not competing. This is not two water bottles competing. This is heaven and earth comparison. And you can draw a higher premium to it. Third is...
Sir, one I need to add. People, when they buy one bottles, they usually, if they have backpack also, they hold it in the hand and they go. So that they want to show off that they have drinking that water.
Absolutely. And they will never drink it. We'll just kind of sip it, right?
Yeah.
And and you will keep it with at the home and all that. So that is what is the branding. And I have always told you, I've asked you guys so many times this question is that when somebody is in the airport and he wants to open his laptop, what is the likely brand that he's going to have? It has to be Apple. Otherwise, do you think he will open a Lenovo laptop or some other laptop? No, he doesn't want to be associated with the laptop, if it is a non-Apple brand, he wants to show off. That's the brand which benefits from it, right? And the brand called Tesla right now, what a brand that is, right? It means so many things. What does Tesla mean? If you look at, if you follow Elon Musk, if you follow me, you'll follow Elon Musk. If you follow, you see so many about Tesla's autopilot and how autopilot saved their lives and things like that. So the brand gets to be associated with quality. That is what it is. And we don't have to talk about the kind of product lines that come out from Apple. So the brand gives you a promise of quality. The very word, this is there. Sir, what is that? We have all kinds of masks which are available. But if you want to buy masks from, let's say, a big pharmaceutical company, what would I do? I will buy it from the big brand because it gives you a feeling of quality. Maybe the other guy also has the same quality, but it's the power of the brand which gives you that and gives you confidence. The next thing that you have is brand equity. What is brand equity? Is the brand by itself is a sellable product. We can sell the brand. It happens all the time. Now, for example, the brand Kingfisher may have been owned by somebody else, but the brand itself signifies a lot of things and people are willing to pay money to own that brand. A brand like Binaka or a brand like, there's so many such brands.
It's a recognized name, kind of.
Which one?
It's a recognized name, kind of.
Yeah, it's a recognized name, and even though it can be sold, we are willing to pay for that brand. For example, Toys R Us. Toys R Us. If you have
just to add, somebody said Jaguar, I believe. Somebody.
Which one?
Jaguar.
Yeah.
Jaguar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lovely brand. The company may be dead, but people are willing to buy it, right? So that's what is the brand all about. The second thing is brand gives you experience. The very word Amul gives you a feeling of, one of the things that you must, as managers, notice existing warfare. The existing war is between Amul and the other ice cream manufacturers. Amul fought the battle with Hindustan Lever. What is that brand called? Walls, quality walls. Huh?
Quality walls, yes, sir.
Yeah, because they said that you cannot use the word cream, ice cream, or milk because you do not have a milk component in your ice creams. It is made out of vegetable oil. So Amul said that we are the guys who use pure milk. So now the very word Amul signifies that it's a more highly quality conscious feeling. Just the word Disneyland is enough for you to feel, the feeling of whatever that fun and all that is associated with it. If I give you a brand like Indigo, mostly in time, right? They tell you, oh, you should always fly Indigo because they fly in time. For all you know, SpiceJet may be flying in time all the time, but the brand gets associated with it, right? So that's what the power of the brand is. And on and on and on, we could go about it for time. And then brand equity. Brand equity is a big topic. You have another, I think if you go into term 3 or 4, there's more discussion on it. But the brand will give you a certain benefit. The brand will give you an override on features. Okay? But we'll not talk too much about it. We could go about it. Then we have the attributes of a strong brand, delivering excellent results, staying relevant, prices to meet the perception of a value, understand customer relationship. I wanted to look at one particular slide. Brand extensions. Okay, let me try to create a slide. Okay, brand. I don't find the slide, so I'm going to create it because I just got the idea that I should share that with you. How many of you know this product called Armani?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, yeah, most of you know, I think, right? Armani is a great clothing brand. And Armani suit may cost, I don't know, I don't wear Armani, but Armani suit may cost anywhere between quite expensive brand.
Expensive, sir. Yes.
Huh? Yeah, but the problem with this brand, let's look at the Armani brand, is a high-end, top of the quality. I can think of more products like that. I can't get it right now. Is that it's a very expensive brand. Since it's a very expensive brand, what kind of a market share will they have? I'm asking you.
Very less.
Yes. Niche market share. Very less market share, which means that they are fighting for a market share which is very, very less. The top of the end, the CEO quality, or the 1% of the Indian population only can afford Armani products. But if out of that 1%, that 0.5% don't like Armani, you're struggling. So what will Armani do? Can they reduce their price? If they reduce their price, what happens? The
value will decrease.
Gone.
And people think that their quality has been compromised.
So I, who always buy Armani products, will all of a sudden notice that, hey man, they have reduced their prices. I see somebody else wearing Armani. I'm not going to buy Armani anymore. That's it. So what Armani has to do is, they are in a very catch-22 situation. They have a great brand, but they are not able to increase their market share. But they don't want to dilute their brand. Then they come back with what is another product, which is called the Armani. What is it called? Armani
Exchange.
Exchange.
Money exchange.
Armani Exchange. So now, or then you have Armani Inter something, XXX or something like that. Okay. So what Armani does is that they come up with a second line of products which are not Armani, but which is Armani Exchange. So you don't know, you know that Armani is a great brand, and all of a sudden you see me wearing an Armani Exchange. You say, man, what's happened to Ramesh? He's buying some great, it looks like he hit the lottery. But the fact was the Armani Exchange is probably 50% lower in terms of the pricing. But the guy who actually knows the brand knows that this is not Armani, this is Armani Exchange. So what have you done? You've not diluted your brand. You've taken your brand forward and entered into a new market segment, and thus expanded out your reach and possibly eaten into a Peter England or Louis Philippe kind of a branding. And that can go on. You can come back with Armani Interchange or whatever that is, which is an even lower brand. So what branding does is, branding has one problem. It could limit your segment. It could limit your segment, or you could, with a modification, you could extend your segment, extend the segment. So that is one line that I wanted to mention about. If that is done, what are brand and line extensions? Brand and line extensions is a better slide here. Brand and line extensions, brand extension is that when you have a lovely brand, a brand which is, let's say, like Dove or any of these Himalayan products or whatever, so you get to extend a line of products which are similar in nature, which means that, or take the example of line extension. Okay, let's address one at a time. Line extension. Line extension means use the brand and come up with a series of versions of products, which is like MI came up with the Redmi Note, which was a very popular one. So you come up with Redmi Note, but then you come up with various other MI phones, which are actually an extension of the Redmi Note. That is
two smartwatches, sir.
Yeah, no, okay, no. So when you have a great brand, you want to extend the line. You want to extend the line. That means you come up with iPads, iPhones, and not even iPhones. You come up with iPads, laptops, and desktops. They are all extensions of the same product, but you're getting into different categories of the same product. But if you use the Apple brand and come up with an Apple TV, or you use the Apple brand and come up with a Apple Watch, the watch has nothing to do with your primary brand, which was the computing brand. But you take advantage of that brand to come up with a series of line of brand extensions. You extend your brand into something else which you generally are not there yet. That means to say, let's say if you have one example I was thinking of is that IIM is probably a great brand when it comes to MBA. Yeah, they can do line extensions by doing up with weekend MBA programs, or why go to IIM? We take this example of Dayanand Sagar University itself, is that you come up, you have a great legacy institution. So you come up with MBA programs, you come up with this kind of thing. But you may also take advantage of the fact that Dayanand Sagar gets into hospitals. Now, what has hospitals got to do with, or technically, Dayanand Sagar was known for their hospitals, and then they get into education, or whichever way it is. So you take a brand and just like MI came up with phones, and now MI has got rice cookers, TVs, and whatnot. So these are what is line extensions and brand extensions. But you must be very careful about what is line extensions. For example, you have a brand extension. Harpic is a great brand in the cleaning industry, and it has a significant presence in every other person's bathroom. Just because he has a significant presence in every other bathroom, Harpic cannot come up with Harpic toothpaste, right? It would not serve the purpose. It could be a deterrent to a thing. So you cannot take a brand extension, and sometimes it could be disastrous also. Who would want to say that I brush my teeth with Harpic? Not going to go anywhere. So this is what is brand extensions and line extensions. Some example of line extension is FedEx. You come up with a series of products like that. So this is about brand and brands. We are done with our class. We're probably done with everything related to the term one. If you have any questions all along, we can discuss with them.
Thank you so much, sir. It's been a pleasure.
Pardon?
I said thank you so much, sir.
Oh yeah, sure. Thank you. I mean, yeah. Good. Yeah, you're right, Murugesan. You are
this was Mahesh, sir.
Emporio. There you go. You have exactly. Why create so many of them? It's just to create a different brand and feel. So I enjoyed teaching you all. I hope you enjoyed listening to my lectures. And
very good.
Good.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
So,
Sir, this is
you guys, when you are in term 2 and I walk into the college, we can stay connected. So as I said, the part of the exam is almost similar to every other. Why almost? It is similar to every other exam that you will take in term 1. I have to evaluate you on assignment 2. I'll do that over the weekend. General comment on assignment 2, you've all done well. Some of you I have pushed you to do it on your own. Some of you have commented on your term 1 also. I mean, assignment 1. Somebody was saying something?
This is my sorry, ma'am. Please go ahead.
No, go ahead.
okay. My question, I'll go. Okay, my question is that you are putting the brand logo. So is it short question will come as brand logo and you have to identify the brand? No.
No. These are generally to break ice, They're generally to wake up some sleeping souls. Yeah.
That's just an example, Sir Ravi.
Yes, just to excite you to get into a conversation and all that. No, I'm not.
Short question is there, na? You can put any question. That's why I'm worried. We don't know many brand logo.
No.
Okay, so the brand logos will not exam
logo and ask you to identify.
Maybe we need to explain which strategy or marketings for this brand, like Asian Paint they have used and how they put that market segmentation. Like that, we can give the examples while writing.
Why is it that one example I might want to ask you is, why is it that the Asian Paints have been able to have a consistently good market share in the home decor or home repair? Is because what they have done is they have ensured that the word Asian Paints is associated with a great brand. And it's a painstakingly built up brand and things like that. You can talk about it. I definitely will not ask you this question. Right?
Sir, this is Kushbu here. Related to that brand extension, I had one small confusion. May I ask?
Of course.
So, sir, just one example, you were talking about MI. So, if MI is extending from a smartphone to TV or to tablets or something, so that is coming under extension. What if it is creating a product like watches or headsets or these things? So that is also considered in extension. Matlab, my question is, if you change the nature of the product, like let's take Tata. So they are producing steel, but they also produce salt. So that is considered as extension only, or that is not considered in extension?
Okay. Hang on. Very good question. Good. I really have to give you the answer. Okay. Now, Tata is manufacturing steel, right? Tata steel is primarily used for automotive sector. I assume.
Yes.
Let you want to make some assumptions. Tata makes steel for automotive sector. Tata notices that there is a great demand for construction company. Construction industry is also buying a lot of steel. We are not there. You see behind every auto, there is that TMT. So Tata says, TMT mein to T hai, why not we take advantage of that? And why don't we make steel rods? I think they are rods, whatever that is. Steel for the construction company. They were doing automotive, they were doing construction. It is the same steel. What they are doing is they are making automotive steel. Now they are also making steel for construction company. Tomorrow they might do steel for, let's say, high-tech companies. So it is the same steel, but getting into it. Here, the example, as you can see, is Coke, Diet Coke, Strawberry Coke, or Coke for kids. Coke for very old people. Coke. So it's still Coke, but you are segmenting, addressing different segments. So that is the line extension. The production line में जो निकल रहा है, you start giving it different things. It is still the same product. It is still the Coke. It is still sugary water, but you are just giving it a different name. Now Tata says, brilliant, we have something which is so great. Let me also make salt. Now, why would anybody buy salt which is called Ramesh salt? Nobody would buy that salt. But the moment people come up and say Tata salt, so what is great about Tata salt is that the very word Tata means that this has got the brand of Tata. So I can confidently buy it. I can confidently buy that salt because Tata is risking their name into this, just like how Google was afraid to risk their name and put Tej. So they are doing what is called a brand extension. Google is always doing line extension. Google comes out with email, then it comes out with calendar, it comes out with what else does it come out with? Google Drive, photos, everything is related to your computer. But let's say Google comes up with something else, like Google Cars. Now, will they name their car Google or will they name their car something else? We don't know. If Google is a great brand that you are willing to associate with something like, obviously, if Google does maps, I'm sure their cars will work better, something like that. So that is brand extension.
Yes, sir.
I'll give you, do you know Jaguar? Jaguar is not the ones that the car company, but most of our homes have Jaguar taps.
Hardware, handware.
And you know what? The difference between a Jaguar versus another, let's say, what do you call those?
Hindware is also a competitor.
But price difference is almost 2 times. You pay twice for a Jaguar tap because they are so high quality.
Johnson & Johnson.
When Jaguar decided to do a brand extension, they said that we will come out with Jaguar switches for your homes. So the very fact that it is Jaguar switches, you know that, wow, man, their plumbing products work so well. So their electrical switches will also work well. That is brand extension. Jaguar making for toilets, making for showers is all line extension. I hope I'm clear.
Yes, sir. Very true.
Sir, I have one point. When it comes to brand, I think marketing is also most important because when you said Tata, they went from commercial vehicles to the passenger vehicles, car segment. They were into a risk, but they came up with a marketing strategy and they evolved with the passenger vehicle.
Correct. You're making a statement, right?
Yes.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so they come up with it and then they've done well. They have moved away from some of the trouble that they have.
Yes, and even they purchase the bigger brands as well.
Correct. All so that you get a good branding associated with it. Nowadays, Chinese products are cheap, but Chinese products have another brand. The made in China is now a liability rather than a brand advantage in a country like India, right? Hey, if it is Chinese, it's cheap, I will buy it. If it's Chinese, it's unpatriotic, I'll not buy it. So you see what's happening to the brand. The brand had a cheap advantage, but the brand now has a negative advantage. So some things can go wrong with the brand as well. So I'm done. Thank you very much and all the best. And those of you who wanted to give me a call, maybe you can do that right after this class.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, thank you. All the best. Yeah.
Good day.
Thank
you,
you,
sir.
Professor.
Thank you, sir.
Very much, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Professor.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
Professor.
Thank you.